Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on the essentials of digital marketing. I'm Liz Carter, your host for this webinar, and joining me as our presenter is my colleague, the amazing marketing guru, Chris Hall, who will run through the essentials of digital marketing, define core marketing goals, show you how to perfect a website, and produce that engaging content plus social media and lots more. After Chris has run through his presentation, we'll have a time for your questions. So please feel free to drop these in as we go along in the Q&A section, or you can drop them in at the end and I'll read this out for Chris to answer. You can also vote for a question that you like or you feel is relevant to you with a thumbs up. Closed captions are available and you can turn these on by clicking on the CC closed caption button to show subtitles. We are recording this session and the recording along with the slides and helpful resources will be available sometime next week and we'll let you know by email when these are ready. Please feel free to use the chat function during the webinar to share with us any tips, advice, personal experiences or even struggles that you may be facing relating to the topic. The information we share in the chat always helps us to learn from each other. And now if you can, type in the chat, tell us where you're joining us from today. So let's get that chat going. If we do have any connection issues, I'll jump in, and so will my colleagues in the back end to sort these out as quickly as possible. That's it from me for the introduction, the housekeeping. I'll pass over to you, Chris. It seems ages since I've hosted and you've done the webinar, doesn't it? But it's good to be back and doing it with you again.
Likewise, and thank you for a lovely introduction, as always. Thanks very much.
No problem. I'm going to pop my camera off and I'll see you soon.
Cheers. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Charity Digital webinar. I'm Chris Hall, as Liz said, head of marketing here at Charity Digital. I'm not sure about the guru side of things, but I definitely am head of marketing. And as Liz rightly pointed out, it's been a while since I've delivered one of these. I used to do a lot more in the past. So you may recognize me from then, but if not, if you're brand new to us here at Charity Digital or haven't, this is the first one you've been to in a while, I'll just give you a very short introduction to myself before we dive in, give you a little bit of background on who I am. So I've been working in marketing for coming up to 11 years now. Started off as a young whippersnapper in the pharmaceutical industry before moving stateside, and I worked for various tech for good startups over there. I then landed back in the UK in 2017 and did a few years stint at Google, working for their local guides team as well. I then wound my way to where I am today here at Charity Digital, and I've been here for 3.5 years now. And a big part of my remit is to look after our growth, events, campaigns, and content teams here. It's a great gig. Has many challenges as working for any charity does, but being able to provide support to charities like yourselves that go on to help those thousands of other service users is something I find personally incredibly rewarding and satisfying. I think the last time I delivered one of these, I was an expectant father, but now I'm actually a father to a beautiful 3.5-month girl that is stealing all of my sleep at the moment. So if my energy levels do dip, that's the reason why, but I'll try my best to sort of bring the fire for the next hour or so. I'm a proud Geordie, if you can tell from the accent. I'm a climate enthusiast. I've travelled to Antarctica and a few other places on climate expeditions, and penguin lover. And I've included a photo of me standing on an Antarctic ice cap in my toon top to prove it, if you don't believe us. So now that we know each other clearly very well, and it's great to see so much of you getting involved in the chat. Keep that coming throughout the webinar. I love for people who are participants in the webinar to get involved, share tips, share stories if something triggers something within you from what I talk about, share something that you're doing, and have those conversations going on the chat. That's where the added value comes from webinars like this. So let's get on to the topic at hand today, which is marketing. Digital marketing, to be specific. So, marketing is something I personally fell in love with back in the early 2010s. And why I fell in love with it, for me, it was always about that the psychological side of it, the understanding of cognitive behavior of people and how we as marketers can build emotional connections with people through products, services, and causes. marketing's been an essential tool for everyone since the dawn of time. You can take it all the way back to the dawn of time, the spreading of religion, on, you know, many years later to your town criers and your extra read all about it, all the way through to politics. You know, it's something that's heavily used in politics dating back to ancient Greece. But let's not get into that. That's a totally different webinar that we don't, and a rabbit hole that we don't really need to go down right now. And over the years, it's evolved. You know, for a long time, a long stretch of time, we were used to the more traditional, you know, the Mad Men marketing tactics, the advertising, PR, direct, door drops, etc. And while they still have their place very much so in today's society, we're now in an age where people live online. And the spaces becoming increasingly more crowded, and to stand out amongst the crowd, charities need to make digital marketing an essential part of their overall marketing strategy. And that's what we're here to talk about today. It is worth mentioning before we get into it that this webinar is focused and set up to focus on the very basics of digital marketing. So it's for charities who are looking to learn a little bit more about digital marketing, how to get started in their organisation, and just some of the key elements that we believe is your sort of foundation for digital marketing. Now we'll go in. We'll be going in deeper in areas that we'll cover today in future webinars, but for now we just want to keep it at a very basic level. So what is marketing all about? Well, it's a very broad and all-encompassing term. It refers to any action an organisation takes to attract an audience and build that emotional connection between that audience and your product, service or cause. It's active promotion, raising awareness, strengthening loyalty to your cause, and demonstrating the value of your services, among many other things. Now, it's something that every charity, regardless of shape, size and mission, really needs to depend upon. Perhaps you post some fun and informative facts on social media. Perhaps you change the title of your latest email header or subject line. Perhaps you're throwing, you know, a meet and greet event in person or online. All of that either is or requires marketing. And the benefits of effective marketing are huge. So let's take a look at the benefits. Let's start with the obvious one, awareness. There are over 200,000 charities operating in the UK as of today. I believe it's 200,600 and something. I can't remember the last one there. That's a lot. You know, it's a number that increases year on year. And as I kind of alluded to before, we as charities need to compete in what is a really noisy space. And marketing is the tool that helps you stand out and bring more notoriety to your charity and your organisation. Your charity, much like any other business, is a brand, and you'll need to raise the profile of your brand. Digital marketing allows us to reach more people than ever before. And an effective digital marketing campaign can raise the profile of your brand from very, very unknown to incredibly popular almost overnight. I'm sure we're all familiar with the term go viral. It's one I try to avoid as much as possible. But there's truth in it. And awareness is possibly perhaps the greatest benefit of digital marketing for charities, as it can lead to these myriad of knock-on benefits: more funds, more volunteers, and service users. And speaking of funds, marketing lets you get in front of fresh eyes, perhaps people you would not easily consider as your target audience. With raised awareness comes more people visiting your site, more people looking for your charity online, more perception of your charity, and more people engaging with what you have to offer as a service and as a charity itself. And if you set up for it, that will automatically translate into additional donations as well. Each of those fresh eyes is a potential donor opportunity, and effective marketing gives you the chance to showcase the issues that you're confronting, the work you do in the community, and most importantly, the work you could do with a little more support from them. It also helps you increase volunteers. According to the latest NCPO Almanac in 2020-2021, 16.3 million people in the UK volunteered formally. That is through a voluntary organisation of some kind. The same report found that half of UK adults volunteered time to help others at least once in the previous year, a trend that, I think, with the way we're going at the minute environmentally, a trend that's likely to continue. The requirement for volunteering and the impetus to volunteer is growing, and more people are finding ways to help online as well. And that's largely due to what we've all just been through with the pandemic, having to change almost overnight. A successful marketing campaign can not only attract donors, but can also bring in volunteers as well. And on top of that, there's a study from the US actually live at the minute that shows that volunteers are actually twice as likely to donate funds to your cause as well. if they're already volunteering, which kind of makes sense as they're already big fans. So marketing helps you increase volunteers while raising funds, and that's what in the industry we do call a win-win. And lastly, and arguably most importantly, we as charities exist to help people. Effective marketing ensures you manage to reach more service users and have the funds and resources to help those service users too, arguably more so than ever before. So in short, good marketing allows you to grow in various ways, and that growth means you have greater impact for a greater number of people. So now we've kind of gone over some of the basics and just sort of what are the key benefits of digital marketing. How do we sort of get started? How do we drive that impetus to get off our feet and go, right, I'm going to do this? And the way we start is the same as we do with anything, any sort of strategic planning or planning in that sort, and that's to determine what we're actually trying to achieve. But digital marketing can be vast and scary and all the things that come with those two words, but it doesn't have to be complex. But it's very daunting. There's a lot of different avenues that charities can take and a lot of decisions that need to be made. The key thing here is to ensure that you understand your current position. Think about how you want to grow and prioritize the right solutions that will help you achieve what you want to achieve. So the first step in that instance then is to define your goals. You'll probably want to develop a digital marketing strategy. I'd highly recommend it, or your marketing strategy should be digital, whichever way you want to look at it. That does not necessarily mean you need to create, a small novel. It doesn't need to be a long and winding document going into detail about various plans of action, this, that, and the other. It can be much simpler. A good place to start is just outlining where you currently are, where you want to be, and the roadmap that's going to get you there. What areas of growth would you like to see? What resources are you going to need to do it? What deadlines are you going to set to get yourself there? And that's all. So we've got a few tips to help you kind of get started to set effective goals. There's so many acronyms for this, I've kind of lost count. But you can, we have in the past relied on perhaps too much on the SMART criteria, ensuring all your strategy goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. That is tried and tested. But it's not the only one. There are others out there, and I thought I'd talk about another one today, as I've hard pushed the SMART one for the last couple of webinars that I've done. So consider FAST goals. FAST goals aim to accelerate your team's performance by applying the following principles. Frequently discussed is the F. Goals should encourage ongoing discussions and should be made an integral part of both team meetings, one-to-one meetings, and OKRs. Ambitious. Goals should always stretch the team. Be challenging, but not unreachable. It might be good to stagger your goals a little bit, so minimum acceptable stretch, and plan them out that way. Specific, as with the S and SMART goals, these goals should be specific, so very clear, and everybody should be able to understand what is required to achieve the goals. Transparent is the T, and goals should have complete visibility. It could be completely visible, and should allow for complete accountability across the organisation. And I think one of my last webinars was about culture, and accountability came very high in terms of setting up an effective digital culture, which is no surprise to see it here as well. You need to have that team accountability or individual accountability of the people who are looking after a certain area to be able to push each other forward. There are also lots of other ones to SMART and FAST. There's CLEAR, HAND, WISE, and many other acronym-based examples. But SMART and FAST are two we definitely know work, and we've used in the past few. But we'll be linking out to the others in the resources if you want to check them out as well. Another way to help define your goals is by putting them through the 5 Ws. This is the purpose of the 5 Ws to help us paint the clearest possible picture of our goals. It helps refine them and gain a more detailed understanding of each individual goal as we go. The 5 Ws help you to pinpoint any blind spots, consider responsibilities, further consolidate timings, think more about the rationale behind your decisions, and a lot more on top of that as well. And they work by simply asking yourself a few different questions. The first one, who will be involved at each stage? So this allows you to designate roles for team members and leaders and anybody else that's going to be involved in helping you achieve what's required. What do you need to do to complete each stage? Examine the resources that you need, projected resources. So what does the growth look like down the line? So how you can mitigate risk by planning growth further and planning more resources as you grow. Where will each stage be completed? What platforms and channels and tactics are we going to use? What social platforms are we going to use? Email? Do we have budget for ads? This sort of thing. When will each stage be completed? So set timelines. Some things will have more rigidity in them. Some things will need to be more flexible. So make sure you build that in as well. But it's important to have deadlines to keep on top of your goals. And why you've set all the above. So what are the determining factors? What you're looking to achieve? What's the economic environment? How are you going to, what are you going to do, or why you want to do what you want to do? By using the above, you really are able to add further clarity to your marketing goals. And remember that it's better to fine tune at this stage than push forward despite that absence of clarity. If you are feeling like you struggle, take the time, take stock. It's important to get things right now in the planning stage, as that will pay a lot of dividends in the future. Once you have your goals, it's then about embracing the right marketing channels that meet those goals, rather than attempting to do everything. Even the largest charities and the largest businesses and organizations with the biggest budgets in the world will always struggle to do everything. It's about prioritizing what will help you achieve your goals the most. Once your channels are identified, it's then about asking yourself, how can I use the channels as effectively as possible? And that's what we're going to get into now. So here's sort of our key essential channels and a few tips to help you get started. Sorry, excuse me. So let's start with your website. Websites have become essential to charity success in the past decade, and it's unlikely to change anytime soon. It's where everyone who interacts with you online will be pushed towards. It's the first interaction, it's the first impression of who you are as an organization and what you do and how you can help. According to HubSpot, web traffic is one of the top forms of measurements when it comes to judging the success of marketing. The first step is to ensure that you have a simple, well-functioning and easy to navigate website. You also want your site to be aesthetically pleasing. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel when thinking about this. Just make sure everything looks good, works well, and generally makes sense. But depending on your starting position, you will need either create a brand new website or make some changes to your existing website. If you're starting from scratch, you may want to check out WordPress, which allows you to build a website with really high customizable designs. Lots of charities that we speak to already depend quite highly on WordPress, and that works to great success. Has a lot of integrations, a lot of plugins, and a lot of widgets you can use for things like donations and events and things like that. Or charities who operate a little bit differently, you could think about more contemporary options that have come to the fore, by more out-of-the-box solutions like Wix and Squarespace, which allow you to build really attractive sites with a bit more narrow functionality, but it might be better suited to what your needs are. There are tons, hundreds and thousands of other options available online, many of which all offer different functionalities, different prices as well. But the important thing here is for you to do your research, see what you require from a website, think about your goals, think about your functionality, and find the right website building platform that is for you. Once you've got a site, start to think about how you can make your site mobile friendly from there. More than 50% of website traffic now comes from mobile phones, according to Statista. That means that up to half of the potential donors, volunteers, and service users visiting your website are doing so through a mobile phone. So it's essential that we as charities build a website that is optimized not just for desktop, but for mobile as well. Start by ensuring you practice something called responsive design. That means that your web page adapts automatically to a mobile platform, depending on whether the audience is on a desktop or a mobile. Research your website platform to ensure that it provides that option. I think most of them do now, but it's important to remember that it's something you need to do going forward and keep top of mind. Think about the content that you're going to fill your pages with. Responsive designs will ensure everything displays correctly, but you still need to think about whether content is easy to read, whether the colors and formatting and contrast is accessible, and does the squashing it onto a smaller screen affect the user experience and navigation in any way. And one issue facing a lot of charities that we speak to is the size of font, for example. A good font for desktops does not necessarily translate well when viewed on the mobile. So even when we factor in responsive design, so it's something to double check all content on both sites to make sure that it's working accordingly. Another one is images. Images make websites look great, but if the size is too big, then it can really kill load page times. And if you've got someone waiting for sort of 10, 15 seconds for your page to load on a mobile, it's going to put them off doing anything, you know, especially low service areas and things like that as well. So a good tip there is to always keep your images under 100 KB and in JPEG format, and you'll be fine. And lastly, you can't really perfect your website without doing any user testing. You know, it's important to test any changes on and updates, or even a brand new site with your audience. Or how a service user, donor, or any other audience member experience your website is critical to its own success. So test the various journeys you've got set up for each by, you know, interviewing as many members of each audience group that your time allows. You know, is it that the donation journey set up to make it as easy as possible for users to donate? Is there other places you could put donation buttons, for example? Is it easy for potential service users and volunteers to find a way to contact you, or find how to get involved, or find out what your services offer? Is it clear to someone on your site who lands on your site that what you even do? You know, is there very clear about you, a mission? Is it right there front and center? So, you know, I'm perusing the internet and I just randomly find on your site as a potential service user or a donor. Is that navigation clear that this is what we do and this is how we can help? Really spending some time to sit down with, you know, some of your core audience members and some people who you might not engage with you too often. And asking these types of questions will give you that invaluable insight to help perfect your website. That'll push you further than others in the competitive spaces here. And not only that, but you'll actually find out the things. You'll find they'll tell you things that you didn't think of, which is the true value of doing any sort of user testing or research. You know, you don't know. We don't know what we don't know. So being able to get that, you know, pull your head out of it for a second, take a step back, and get some feedback from those people who are using the website or using your platform every single day, gives you that real cutting edge. And it's often the most overlooked part of any sort of website development, but it's easily the most valuable. So once you've got your website set up, it's then about producing engaging content. You know, you've got that fully functional, aesthetically appealing, mobile-friendly website. You start to utilize another element of marketing, which is content. You know, writing content, you know, can be seen as quite simple. You know, it just requires a bit of creative thinking and some writing or some type in that sense. But to create content that increases your reach and has a positive impact, now that's the tough part. We've got a few tips and tricks that can help you start to get involved and start to create a decent and well-functioning blog. The written web pages need to cover relevant content in an inviting way. Your content needs to offer something to your audience, something that will help them to learn, engage, and want to get involved with your cause, want to be a part of something. So start by thinking about what your user needs and wants are. You know, what do your people want to see? What might users and the people who engage with you want to know about? Is there any gaps in the information about your cause that you can potentially fill? Is there any research, key statistics, fun and entertaining things that you can share and write about? Then consider your expertise. Are you well versed in elements of charity life? Do you have expertise others should know about? Can you marry these user needs with your skills and use that marriage to start to define your content strategy and your content plan going forward? And then it's about being entertaining. Right? It's about standing out in a crowded space. And we often joke in the office about writing titles like The Sun, but articles like The Guardian. You know, it's very tongue-in-cheek, you know, but there's an element of truth to it. The content you create has to grab attention, and more importantly, win attention versus whatever else might be on the newsfeed tab or sort of desktop tab. You're not always only just competing against other charities or other organisations in your space. You're also competing against Love Island. You're competing against Great British Bake Off. You're competing against influencers and TikTok people. So it's not about just being as attention grabbing as the people next to you, but it's about being as attention grabbing as everybody else out there as well. Another way to aid the fight is to publish content regularly. Consider developing a content calendar so that you produce a new piece of writing at least once per week. And if you're struggling to fill that quota, keep an eye on the developments in your own sector and look at events throughout the year that you can stick to and talk about and offer an opinion about. Provide some thought leadership. Start there, build from it. Regular posts will lead to return visitors and really help to build and strengthen your online presence as a website as well. To add credibility to your content, charities should pick a tone of voice and apply it to all content, that's emails, social, and any other forms of marketing as well. A strong and consistent tone of voice helps to build trust, increases return visitors to your site, and demonstrates a level of professionalism and personality as well. And it also shows you have that subject matter expertise and that thought leadership, and you have that consistency that gives you that expertise. Successful content depends on a consistent tone of voice. You need to ensure that your tone of voice broadly reflects what your brand identity is. For example, you're a charity that deals with issues that you can treat with a light-hearted, maybe comedic approach. You can adopt an informal tone of voice that includes some jokes and some light-heartedness. Obviously, if your charity deals with more serious issues, as may well be the case, then you should adopt a more formal approach. Something that's a bit more empathetic and authentic at the same time. The key is to ensure that the tone of voice complements the subject matter, but also ensures that you do not trivialize, as this can be the quickest way to kind of put off any potential audience members and donors in particular. A good jumping off point is what we always see, what donors want is authenticity. People find it easier to connect to brands that, just like them, they have the human element when it comes to content. They add the levels of personalization, the thank you journeys from a donor perspective, the personalization from a welcome point of view as well. All of those types of things, that personal and human touch, help emulate the tone of voice and drive donor retention and user retention as well. Charities should also look to consolidate that tone of voice in what we call a house style or a style guide. And this can be hundreds of pages long again, or you can simply put down some of what your top rules are. And it should include the basics, such as what are your branding rules, what are your branding options, color codes, that sort of thing. Foreground, background, what are your image rules, the sizes, what to include in them, that sort of thing. What's your tone of voice? What are your punctuation rules? Do you follow the Oxford comma or not? What are your formatting options, and so on? Creating a style guide can take quite a while. So perhaps we always recommend that borrow one from the internet, help you get started. The Guardian and Observer style guide is a popular choice, for example, and we make sure to link out to that from our resources after the webinar as well, so you can have a look at it. But a simple Google search will bring that up as well. I did mention imagery as part of the style guide as well, but it is a little bit more than that. As the old adage says, a picture paints 1,000 words. And in that vein, imagery improves written content as well. You should establish some basic rules for imagery and apply them across all your marketing and comms. Perhaps you want to adopt a vibrant and colourful imagery, or maybe have a more minimalist approach, and that might be more your speed. Some organisations may want to avoid images that include wording, or ensure all images have people included in them. Whatever you choose, you can find lots of options for free and paid for imagery as well. And the best free options include Unsplash and Quaxography, though there are plenty of others that your free image Google search will bring up as well. Charities can also spend a little bit of money for paid options. You've got Shutterstock, Getty, iStock, all of which are brilliant, really high quality images that you can access for a monthly payment. But of course, if you take a lot of your own photos, going back to that authenticity point, you might find it best to use those. And what we always say when you use a lot of your own content or own photos for this site, so don't get worried and caught up about the quality. It's generally thought that the poorer quality actually helps breed authenticity. So as they're your own photos that can talk to your brand, talk to what you do, so they might be better for your organization if that's something you decide on. Quick note to remember on images, to always remember and think about copyright when using any sort of image libraries, whether free or not. Images either you need to pay for the licenses, or if you're using paid for, making sure you have access to use the rights to it, or if you're using free images, make sure you're obeying to the laws of Creative Commons licenses. So you might have to give credit to the photographer and stuff like that. So make sure you keep that front and center whenever you use any sort of free imagery. You should also consider Canva. I'm a big fan of Canva. The platform allows you to improve any sort of imagery. They have their own stock libraries as well. That gives you the options for resizing, adding filters, removing backgrounds, adding personalized elements, and so much more as well. I agree, Tom, Canva rules. I think it will be my lasting legacy here at Charity Digital. I've been using it since about 2000 and early 2010s. I brought it to Charity Digital, and I think that's, if I'm not remembered for anything else, it will be for Canva. And while you can get it, there is a heavily discounted option for charities, and we actually have it listed on our Charity Digital website. So get yourself over there, and you click through there and go and get started for next to now. So just want to up the ante a little bit now. One way to really break through the noise is to master the art of SEO. SEO, or search engine optimization, is vital for marketing purposes. According to SEO Link, 49% of organizations say that organic search brings them the best marketing return on investment. For your charity to be visible, you need to improve your reach through organic searches. SEO is the process of improving the visibility of a website or a web page on a search engine. Search engines broadly look for pages that contain high quality information that directly relates to the searcher's request. The search engine, it'll be Google, Bing, or anything else, determines the relevancy of a term by what they call crawling your site and evaluating the relevance based on complex and ever-changing algorithms. Now, looking for keywords and scanning lots of other information contained on pages as well. The search engines determine the quality of a website by various means, but one of the most prominent is the number and quality of those websites that actually link to your page and your site. In essence, your SEO success is dependent on the reputation of your site. SEO algorithms are very complex, but there are some very simple rules that you can follow when commissioning and writing content for your charity website. And these rules do include focus on keywords. So a keyword or a focus keyword, as some call it, is a word that describes the content on your page or post best. It's the search term that you want to rank for with a certain page. So when people search for a keyword or phrase, for example, digital marketing might be one of ours, in Google or other search, they should find their page of digital marketing. They should hopefully find this webinar. If you were to search our keyword being digital marketing for charities, you'd hope by putting that into Google, this webinar would come up, or an article pertaining to this webinar would come up. In essence, when someone searches for a keyword you set up, they should find your website. To help focus on keywords, you really need to ensure that you engage in what we call effective keyword research. This helps you identify what your potential audience is searching for, so you create content to serve that search need. Some really great tools out there that can help you determine what keywords you should be using and what your audience is potentially searching for. List off the following tools that we use and you can also find helpful. So Google Trends allows you to know when certain keyword terms are trending or more popular and when they're less popular, which might affect how you write your content. There's SEO Profile. Google Search Console helps you see what people are searching on Google that might be pertaining to your audience. There's Serpig and Moz as well. Moz helps you determine what keywords you should be using. You can then optimize the use of these keywords by including them in the title of your article or content, the stamp first, the URL, and the text. There's sort of different opinions on how much you should include the keyword in your text, but we generally follow the Yoast rule of thumb, which is keywords should make up about 1 to 2% of your word count. So it depends on how long your article or your piece of content or your web page should be. Make sure your SEO content is of high quality as well. You know, it needs to be easily readable, it needs to be really shareable, and also needs to be easily accessible as well. So there's a couple of Hemingway app, for example, allows you to run it through there for scoring. Yoast, if you have a Yoast plugin for your WordPress site, which I'd highly recommend if you've got a WordPress site, that tells you where you need to change certain things and where you might need to make language simpler and stuff like that as well. We also mentioned about imagery and improving load times before. That is an important part of ranking highly on SEO, so make sure your load times are as low as possible wherever possible. And a quick way to get around that is to make sure your images are as low quality as possible as well, or as low sized while maintaining high quality. Sorry, I'll rephrase that, as possible. And lastly, as we already talked about, make sure your site is mobile friendly as well. Now, SEO might seem complex, and it is for large parts, but by doing the basics, it can be, doing the basics can be relatively simple to do once you get the hang of it. Just requires a little bit of time, a little bit of care to your website and the writing of your pages. But there are some fantastic tools out there to really help you get to grips with it and help you along the way. So next on the list is to start thinking about other forms of content. Once you've got settled with your written articles, you don't need to just restrict yourself to those. Smartphones, we've all got them now, or most of us have them now. They allow us all to be, sort of directors these days, content creators in our own right. And the rise in video marketing and engagement in video content, think about how we can start to include video in your content creation. Most of us have a headset, a Zoom account. Now that means you can create webinars as well, and you can even go a step further and start to create podcasts too, if that's something that will benefit you and your organization. Key here is to always worry less about the look and feel and always focus on the content itself. Don't worry about the length. Don't worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about the quality. I've said this before in many a webinar, and I still believe it now. We as humans are creatures of binge. We watch, when it comes to content and probably other things, we watch back-to-back episodes on Netflix. I watched all episodes of Making a Murderer when that came out. House of Dragon, caught up with all 4 episodes straight away when that came out this week as well. We do it all the time, sort of consciously or unconsciously. We do the same with podcasts. We can listen to 2 or 3 podcasts in a commute. If the podcast's short and the commute's long enough, we'll read 100 pages of a book at a time. You kind of get the gist. I think my point being here is that as long as the content is good, the content's relevant, and it's easily accessible and findable from your audience perspective, you'll actually be off to a winning start. And once you get sort of the ball running with trying these different types of content, once you're live, you can start to learn from the data, so evaluate the engagement, how people are coming into contact with your content, and then you adapt as you go. You take it from there, and you gradually get better as other areas grow as well. It's important, think about content that broadly suits your audience. What do they want to see? Just to bring this front focus again. What do your audience want? What do they need? What are your goals and what is your expertise? And that forms the basis of your content strategy. And diversifying your content portfolio really allows you to start to reach new and different audiences, driving new donors, reaching out to more volunteers, and bringing on board more service users as well. So you've got the website, you've got the content, now you need some exposure, you need to get it out there. There are more than 4.5 billion global monthly users on social media, according to Smart Insights. And more than 57% of the world's population, currently use social media, with the average user spending more than 2 hours a day scrolling through their news feeds and favorite creators. That's a lot. Simply put, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Pinterest, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, YouTube, and all the others that I've missed consume so much of our time. And in 2019 alone, charities raised more than 1.6 billion pounds from fundraising just on Facebook, only on Facebook and nowhere else. So it's safe to say, I think, that social media is indispensable to charities. It's something we actually can't afford to ignore. But as charities, we need to ensure that we're using social media in the right way. And the first mistake that many charities, I think, is commonly made is trying to master every social media platform, spreading time and resources thin for each, or trying to be perfect at 7 and end up being not so good when being perfect at 3 and absolutely nail it. We do see that, if that is the case, charities often end up performing below par across all platforms rather than performing well in a chosen few. But how can you decide, with all that choice and all those platforms and new ones constantly being added and one's kind of dwindled off and things changing on platforms so much, how can you decide what the right platform is and then go one step forward? How can you use it effectively as well? So the first step is to think about the platform itself, or the platforms. And the best platforms for you will depend, to go back to what we kind of started with, it'll really depend on what your marketing goals are and what your audience uses. If, for example, you're trying to improve engagement with a specific community, you might use Twitter or use Facebook groups. They might serve you best. If you're trying to improve your professional network, engage with more corporate donors and more businesses, consider LinkedIn. That might be the best thing for you. If you want to reach a totally new, maybe younger demographic, you might want to check out TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, for example. Key here is to identify where your various audiences live online. What platforms do your donors use? What platforms do your volunteers use? What platforms are service users using? They all might be different, so all might be using different platforms. This is going to require a bit of research on your part, but you're figuring this out alongside your goals actually puts you ahead of the curve when planning effectively to use your digital marketing channels. It gives you a clear direction for your digital marketing strategy. Now, once you've decided on a platform or a few platforms, start working out the best ways to use them, which requires an understanding of the sort of unwritten and written rules when it comes to social media. Each platform has its official rules that you need to follow, and you need to familiarize yourself with those rules simply to allow you to understand how the platform actually works, what you should put out there, length of time, all that sort of stuff. But perhaps more importantly, you need to kind of work out the unwritten rules and trends that best suit the content that you're going to push out. That means thinking about some or perhaps all of the following questions. How many posts should you do per day? What are the best times to post content? Should I use images, GIFs, videos, memes? Should I use all of the above? Should we tag people? Should we pick on hashtags and use those? Should we engage with some digital partners that can help us spread our message a little bit more? And there's two ways to get the answers to these questions. One is go back to that research that I was just saying. Ask your audience. Have them tell them what their preferences are, and you'll start to build up, a sort of sample size of correlated data that can help you start to form the basis of your digital marketing plan. The other way, if you might not have a big audience yet, or you might not get much response to research, is to start posting and test it yourself. Just give it a go. Start putting different posts out at other times, try different content, try different formats, have imagery, video, that sort of thing. See what works best. It's probably best to keep what you find out, what you're learning, as well document. And then if your research suggests that one post per day is the best for your chosen platforms, then go with that for a bit until it tells you something different. You can perhaps experiment and explore your findings, adapting them based on various responses you receive from your audience. But the key here is to test, to learn, to iterate and adapt continuously. It's a continuous circle. You need to constantly review your analytics on your socials to ensure that you're revising and adapting to make most of what's available. And depending on the size and structure of your charity, it may also prove helpful to develop a separate social media strategy or dedicate a specific portion of your digital marketing strategy to social media. It gives you a much more detailed understanding of what you want to achieve with social. Either way, after going through the process, you should be left with a very clear picture of how to put the right content in the right places at the right times for your various audiences that you serve. Another powerful marketing essential is to put a lot of stock into email marketing. Despite email sort of constantly being and becoming more difficult to make successful, the pros of email marketing at the minute still do outweigh the cons. Effective email marketing improves the growth of your audience, allows you to generate extra funds, help advertise your cause, and so much more. And with a little research and a few tips, it can become an essential tool in any digital marketers or digital marketing strategies arsenal too. Getting started, start by gathering data. Look at the tools you already have at your disposal and see what data they contain therein. Check out donor or user data, comments on articles, event signups and registrations, website registrations, anything else where you've collected data can be used to build up your email database. Every bit of that information, every small piece of data that you have available is essential. But before you start, you need to do the requisite compliance checks as well, ensuring that the data you've collected is usable according to the legal requirements and ethical standards. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you should ensure that consent is GDPR compliant, meaning users have actively consented to contact them and contacting them directly and using their data. If then the data is usable, you can start to build those email marketing databases. And the data may give you information beyond simple contact details, and that's what we really hope for. It may reveal, for example, location, age, likes, and other demographics as well. All of that data is essential when sending emails, as it provides the basis of what we call active personalization. Targeting and personalization is about getting the right emails to the right people and not annoying users with what we call spam. We don't want to send them too much and on content that they're not necessarily interested in. If you need to get more data to help you build your lists, this is quite common and needs to be done every 3 years anyways. Never be afraid to ask. Users are often really willing to sign up to email lists. but they will only do so if everything is simple and they know what they're getting in return. Ensure the sign-up form is easy to find and visible to as many people as possible. Consider placing a sign-up button as a permanent fixture on your website, or popping a sign-up button in popular web pages that are highly visited. Maybe add a sign-up form to your site. This can be a good way of getting people to sign up without crowding your site as well, but it can prove frustrating to users sometimes. So monitor the response carefully and make an informed decision on the worth of including pop-ups in if it's going to be too spammy, too overbearing. In addition, you could ask people who sign up for various different fundraising campaigns or events to join your mailing list as part of the sign up, because that provides sort of a natural opportunity to keep them informed about future events as well. Remember, when completing sort of forms or buttons of any kind, to keep it simple. We don't want, users don't want to fill in long scrolling forms, don't want to spend hours reading before they have to sign up to something. Don't want to fill in long and sort of winding complexity as well. So keep it simple, make sign-up options short and clear, and always ensure that you specify exactly what your user can expect. If need be, you can always create a two-step process. The first sign-up page can be the critical stuff that you need. It might be name, email address, or whatever. You can then run a separate campaign the day after, for example, or 2 days after, asking them to go back and fill in another short form, which gets you that core detail that can help you start to build segments, and start to drill down further into your marketing and how they want to engage with your organization. I did just mention segment, and it was almost like a planned segue that. Once you've got it, it's all about using that data to start to segment your audience into groups you want to target with certain information. First off, identify audiences by what they want from you, be it a donation, a service, or volunteering. You can then use the additional collected data to really narrow that criteria down a little bit further. For example, a fundraising event in a specific location, you might want to invite only people from that address or surrounding postcodes. I always use a specific campaign of interest. My wife works with WWF, so think about them as like they want to run a polar bear adoption campaign. You might want to email only those who have shown interest in or a marked interest in adopting in either adoptions and or polar bears as well. So you might want to only send that to people who visited polar bear pages about polar bears, or engage with content only about polar bears, or have clicked an interest on a sign-up form about polar bears. It's about really targeting down and segment to not spam the rest of the people who don't send to the people who might be interested in cheetahs, for example, or leopards, that sort of thing. Use how people engage with the emails and your website to build those additional segments and subsegments. And this will continuously develop the relevancy of your sends and increase the likelihood of engagement with your email marketing as well. Also, you've got to make sure your email messages are personal. A great rule when it comes to email marketing is to remember that the more personal the message, the more authentic and the more likely you are to build that emotional connection and get a positive reaction as well. And lastly, on email marketing, this one is perhaps a little obvious, but the best emails will be personal and personalized, on brand and on point. They'll be well written and clear. They'll make use of really interesting and elaborate design options without confusing the audience. They'll always stay focused on what the main point is as well. And we pulled together a few very quick tips that can help charities create emails that people click on. First of all is use videos and images. The person who receives the email will expect some visuals. Don't lumber the reader with several block paragraphs of text, as they are unlikely to want to read them. Instead, use on-brand and vibrant images, videos, GIFs, animations, anything else you have up your sleeve to add a bit of colour, light, and vibrancy to your emails. Avoid clutter. One mistake marketers make is adding too much text to emails. You can quite easily get sucked in adding loads of information to emails because you have a finite window of attention. But actually what it is an overload of information for the recipient, which can be really frustrating on their part, and they can find it difficult to navigate. Try not to squeeze too much information in your emails. At the end of the day, that's what the call to action and landing page is for, and it's important to remember that. Aim for minimalism, avoid clutter, and broadly try to make everything as clean and clear as possible. Focusing on the key message that you want to get across. If it seems messy, it probably is, so you'll need to start to remove certain elements and rethink a little bit. In the same vein, remember skimmability. We hear a lot about the skimmability of articles, the ability to read through something quite quickly and just take out the more poignant things. But the same is true with emails. Skimmability builds on the point that we've kind of just made above, before, sorry. Keep things clean. Ensure users can skim through the email, picking up key bits of text, focusing on information that proves appealing to them. Great way to sort of aid this is to use bold, bold out the things and make things stand out that you want people to pay attention to. But don't use dense paragraphs that are difficult to sift through. Focus on using 2 or 3 sentences per paragraph with deliberate use of headings and subheadings, images, and anything else that broadly improves the skimmability of emails. And arguably the most important one is focus on the subject line and header. The subject line is the first thing that you present to readers. It's vital. Therefore, that you make the subject line attractive, concise, engaging. You need to entice people to open the email, otherwise they'll never get to the good content inside it. As a rule, it's best to stick to fewer than 10 words and ensure that the subject line accurately conveys precisely what's in the email. And don't forget the A/B test. Subject lines are hard to get right, so come up with a few and make sure to set up an A/B test as well. Do this every time you send out any sort of mass email. That way you'll be optimizing openability with every send you make. Testing has been a regular fixture throughout this. And that's it. That is our essentials of digital marketing. I've went a little bit over time, so apologies for that. Ultimately, charities, we need to focus on the marketing that works best for us. Always look at your results, then change your tactics based on the results. If something's performing well, think about why and double down on that element. Perhaps apply the lessons from that in that area and other areas as well. If one area isn't performing too well, think about the various changes that could be possible. Let the data tell you what's going on and make the changes based on the story you have been told. Marketing is a constant part of charity life, and what works will shift and change with time. I often say as a marketer, I can be wrong 80% of my time in my job and still be right. It's all about what you do with the learning and how you put it forward. Never be afraid to fail. Failure teaches us things. It tells us what to do better next time, what to change, what to push forward, and what to move forward with, what to leave behind. And keep abreast of the changes. The marketing moves all the time, and in the sector and in your sector specifically, look out for all the new tech and new platforms, and constantly aim to improve yourself. If something's broken, fix it. If something's not broken, how can you do it better? And using the steps we've kind of outlined throughout this, you can ensure your charity starts to increase awareness, raises those funds, and ultimately helps more people. As I said at the top of this, we've only covered a few key elements today of marketing. We tried to keep it to the basics, and there was a lot more to delve into, and there's a lot more I'd like to delve into as well. And this will hopefully be the first of a few webinars on marketing, each delving a little bit deeper into specific areas. There's a lot to talk about user experience and user journeys and that sort of thing as well. If you do have any specific areas you want us to delve into, let us know in the feedback form that we send out afterwards. But for now, I believe it's over to the Q&A.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Chris. That's absolutely amazing. And thank you everyone for giving all those advice and tips on Canva as well in the chat, which is brilliant there. So good to see loads of people that are enjoying using that. We've got a question from Dawn. Are there any templates available that can be shared for a digital marketing strategy, please? And that was actually asked by someone else as well. So it's a popular one.
Yeah, I believe we do have our own. I'll have to double check that. I know we did create a few templates for Digital Transformation Week at the beginning of the year. So I think we can have stuff, we share them. If we don't, I know Media Trust covers a lot of this stuff as well. So they have some great stuff. Templates always helpful, John, but never be afraid to get started yourself. Always start with, I always start ours with background. So what have you done in the last year? Goal, what are you trying to achieve this year? And then from there, outline each channel and tactic for a very basic one. And how are they going to help you achieve your goals? At the bottom, if this is going up the ladder, it's always good to put your ask on there. What you're going to need to achieve your goals. So are you going to need more resource? Are you going to need more funding? That sort of thing. So use it as this opportunity to build your proposal, for lack of a better word as well. But yeah, there's some good stuff out there. But this is, I think you'll be with those headings as a starter for none. You'll be sound.
Okay, great, thank you. Amy is asking, do you have an example of a digital marketing strategy, what it should look like? An Excel spreadsheet, something similar?
Yeah, I always write mine, and then I have a spreadsheet. There should be. I always like to think there should be a written document. Again, it depends how complex you want to go in terms of how much you delve into your strategy. For example, here at Charity Digital, because we look after, as part of the marketing team, there's a content team, there's a growth team, there is campaigns team and event team. I empower the team leaders of each team to write their own strategies, and then we create like a mega strategy that pulls everything together. The important thing is always to outline the goals first and foremost. That background started, what have you achieved in the last year, and how's that setting you up for the next year or 3 years or however long you're planning the strategy for? What are you trying to achieve? What are your OKRs for the year? So you're trying to increase users, you're trying to increase donations, trying to bring more volunteers on, whatever your goals may be. Then everything below that should be in service of that goal. How are you going to achieve it? Think back to SMART. What are the timelines going to be? What are the resources needed? What are your check-in points? That sort of thing. But create it as a written document first, and then you can build stuff off of the side of that. So you might want a separate OKR sheet to track success, for example.
Okay. Brilliant, thank you. Any tips for producing content on complex, serious, sensitive, maybe more abstract subjects? For example, an organisation advocate for gender equality and women participation in the labour market. And often the message we share might be heavy in statistics and not always so positive. We also do not work directly with women and more government and with more government and policymakers. So it's quite a specific audience. I find creating content for social media quite challenging. Would be grateful for any advice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And if I'm being totally honest, it's not something I have a load of experience in, but my go-to with anything that poses a challenge and has, complex and serious, sensitive topics is to go down the lived experience route and maybe talk to those people who are dealing with some of those subject matters and understand how they'd like this to be portrayed and what you could potentially do best. Even getting the story to be told from their perspective, if that's possible. I am a big proponent of talking to users, so that might have come across in the presentation. If I have a question or struggling with a challenge, something like this might be a good one to ask some of your core users as well, to be sort of like, okay, we have this little bit of a challenge. How could we do this better? Or how do you think we could do this better? Interview maybe 10, 15 people, as many as you possibly can, to be honest, bigger sample size, better. But they, as your biggest advocates, as your biggest fans, they're invested. And as I was saying for at a point through the presentation, they'll often tell you stuff you don't really know. You don't really know, and we don't know what we don't know. But yeah, don't be afraid to have that open dialogue with them. Okay,
thank you. We've just got a couple of minutes left there, Chris, so we're going to whiz through.
I know that's
yeah. No. Is TikTok a platform worth using when Instagram Reels is very similar?
That is for you to determine, Caris, not me. I think it depends if you've got an audience there or not. For example, from our point of view, we don't see TikTok relevant, but we're very different to a lot of charities out there. There's not many, as a sort of infrastructure charities who deal with charity professionals. It's not an optimal platform for us, so we don't invest a lot of time in it. But if you might survey your audience and find they're 50-50 split between Instagram and TikTok. If that's the case, I'd say to use both. If it's 80-20, you probably want to go with whatever's 80. But it's about understanding if your users or if your audience is using those relevant platforms, and if you have the resource to be able to cater to both, and what matches your goals best. So I would find out what they're using, where they are, and then let that lead you.
Great. Michelle is asking, what is A/B test? A/B split test? Well, it's testing, isn't it?
yeah, A/B split test. So you can do it. Most email platforms will allow you to do it for subject line and content. So you could basically test two subject lines against each other. So you might have an email going out for a campaign. You don't know which subject line is going to land best. So you can put two out. You can then set a specific sample size. So say your email lists 10,000 people, you pick 10% of that, so you send an email to 1,000 people. The test will be live for sort of 5 hours, and then you'll get a result of which subject line we've got the most clicks. Your email campaign will then send out to the remaining 9,000 the campaign that won, so the subject line that won the test. And you can do it the same with content, so you could have 2 of the same subject lines, but the content could be different. And then again, the same thing will happen, so you can test the strength of your content. Very important to do for any sort of email marketing, especially if you're doing any mass sends and you want to test a few things. Testing is super important, and it allows you to optimize the open rate essentially.
Yeah, it is. Chris, we have come to the end, but we've got 3 questions left. Are you okay to whiz through these?
Go on.
Yeah, okay. I hope everyone else is okay as well. So let's do it. Danielle is asking, would you be able to do any specific training on the Google marketing products?
That's something we definitely look into. Yes, I don't think we have any plans for it, but yeah, we'll carry that forward. If you pop that on the feedback form as well, we'll make sure to get a look into it.
Fantastic.
I assume by the Google marketing products, you mean like Google search and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, okay. Matt is asking, what impact do you think the Google helpful content update will have on content that has already been crafted with CSO in mind?
Yes, this is a good question.
It is a good question.
Yeah, it might change things. It's one of those things that it'll be hard to predict.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about it, not too much to be honest, Matt, at the minute, so I can't go into much detail. But it's something you've piqued my interest that I don't think I should go read more about now. But yeah, I can feel an article coming on about that. So
yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Well, watch your space on that one. And the last question from Sophie: any tips for optimizing images on websites?
Yes. So what I said throughout the webinar, so keep it under 100 kilobytes is what the general rule of thumb that we have. Keep it in JPEG format, so try to stay away from PNG and stuff like that. So just focus on it. You can use Canva to resize them if you need to, so keeping the pixels but just making them smaller, and just keep an eye on keeping them under that 100 KB mark as well. And you want to do the same for emails as well. You should never have an image in an email that's over 100 KB because it does slow everything down.
Okay. That's it, isn't it? Oh, hold on. Was there another one in that? No, that's it. Oh, one more. Don't go. Is there any research on best performing subject lines for newsletters?
There is, yeah. There's lots out there, but I often think it's best to figure out yourself. There's nothing that you'll have nothing that's specific for your charity or your audience. So there's good guides and good guidelines, and I believe we've got our own on our site as well, but they'll never really answer it fully for you. I wouldn't take that as gospel, so to say. I'd always recommend A/B testing. You can use that research to, you always want to create a bit of FOMO, for example, use emojis to make them more engaging and stand out, or just a couple of ones off the bat. The we missed you always works. For some reason it always does, but it might not be relevant. What you don't want to do is trick your audience as well. If you send a subject line that opens into an email that then has something totally irrelevant to the subject line, you're going to put them off. So it's about finding out what's best for you and your audience. Test and more testing.
Yep. Okay, we're going to wrap up. Chris, thank you so much. It was so insightful. Really, really good. Enjoyed it, and all of our audience did as well. We've got another webinar in 2 weeks' time on how to protect your charity's reputation, and a heads up too for our Be More Digital Fundraising Day on the 15th of November. So check our website for more details on this. So that's it for today. Another massive thank you, Chris. So enjoyable. Thank you to our audience for joining us. See you soon on another website.
Everybody.
And on another webinar. You can tell it's time for lunch. And bye for now. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.